I'm Tom Chesnes. I've been at Palm Beach Atlantic since 2002. I've worked in ecological research since 1995. I'm also a native of Southern Florida. I've seen firsthand the effects of environmental degradation. Coral reefs that I've dived for decades are now past the points of recovery due to bleaching caused by warming waters. I've seen declines in fisheries and aquatic resources over the years due to declines in water quality, due to loss of filtering habitats. I've seen more frequent coastal flooding despite improvements to our infrastructure. We simply can't keep up with the sea level, especially during periods of higher than normal tides. At the University of Florida, I was the first graduate student for the Office of Sustainability. There, we worked with unifying all of the legs of the sustainability stool: the environmental, the social, and the economic. We produced the world's first sustainability indicators report for our university, and we also published a very important foundational paper on these efforts. So it was interesting when I arrived at Palm Beach Atlantic in 2002 and we started to discuss environmental issues. I found it intriguing that those that believed that the universe, the world, all living things in it, those that believed that it was a result of random happenstance, they happened to have a better appreciation and respect for the created order than those of us who supposedly believed that it was the handiwork and a gift from a personal, loving creator. For example, in 2006, Palm Beach Atlantic's president, David Clark, he was one of the original signatories of the Evangelical Climate Initiative. Basically, this was a call to protect God's creation, and the least of these, those who will suffer the most in the light of climate change without the resources. This, at the time, was a very brave and significant action for our president, especially in the political climate of 2006. I was also involved in this enterprise, getting students to participate in this and similar events. The email pushback that we got from really a pretty small number of parents was pretty tenacious and inflammatory. Somewhere along the line, an understanding of carbon cycles and their consequences became grounds of heresy, especially in some evangelical circles. Again, I commend Dr. Clark in taking a stand for what was right, despite the fervor of opposition within our theological tribe. Again, that's what leadership looks like. A few years later, a colleague and I began work on an extensive book project focusing on Christian higher education. We built a survey instrument that was taken by over 1,900 faculty and 2,400 students from Christian colleges and universities nationwide. Subjects within the book range from academic freedom, faith and campus culture, as well as scientific areas like evolution. I also included 8 specific questions dealing with environmental attitudes and behaviors, which we pulled out and published separately in a paper in a peer-reviewed journal, Christian Higher Education. The overall theme of the data showed that those who self-identify as strongly conservative in their theological beliefs were less likely to buy into anthropogenic climate change. They were less likely to exhibit behaviors that would benefit the environment. If we unpack what this means, if someone self-identifies as strongly conservative in their theological beliefs, we see strong correlations with literal interpretations of the Bible, less likely to accept a female pastor or homosexual congregants, certainly less accepting of evolution, etc. In this study, this group that self-identified as strongly conservative in their theological beliefs, they also had a statistically significant negative correlation with statements such as, it's important for Christians to care about the environment, or questions regarding the role of human activities in affecting climate change. We also saw differences in behavior. They reported a less likelihood of doing simple things like recycling. And even more surprising, we saw a trend where those were less likely to accept a cut in their standard of living, especially to benefit environmental causes. Again, losing this connection between the environment and people, less likely to sacrifice. The big question we ask is, why do we see these trends? In Genesis 1, God deemed his creation as good. The Psalms and Christ's parables are heavy with themes based on our relationship with the natural world. In Leviticus, We are charged to have land Sabbaths, basically rules for sustainable agriculture where we let land rest every 7 years. Of course, these rules have been thrown out by modern Christianity, along with those asking for Jubilee in the subsequent verses. But of course, that's another discussion for another day. We also collected qualitative data in this study, and this helped unpack some of these trends. Hopefully, these trends will also help start as launching points in your discussion in fleshing out some of these data and the causes behind the data itself. A place to start is how Genesis 1 is interpreted, especially how it relates to humans having dominion over the natural world. How one interprets dominion is important. Either do we see it as a ruthless domination, or is dominion more of like a Christ-like stewardship? And certainly this can influence how we see ourselves and our roles in the created order. Another rationale goes back to eschatology, or end-time beliefs. There's a notion that since everything is destined for destruction with Christ's return, why should we save anything at all? Of course, we do not know when the thief in the night will arrive. We don't know how many generations need to exist after us. Of course, many have also criticized thinking that this Christian viewpoint has been heavily influenced by the modern consumerist mindset. The resistance of some Christians to get involved in environmental issues may be based on social factors and preferences. There may be a reluctance to associate with those who may be considered worldly or new age or leftists who are often involved in environmental causes. Some might fear that respecting nature might lead to pantheism. It could also be due to a general distrust of science, often driven by the anti-evolution sentiment in some Christian circles. One of the strongest drives of these trends, though, is the overlap of conservative theology with conservative politics. There is a tendency of people to just basically go along with the entire basket of ideas supported by a political ideology rather than treating each individually. Again, when you are communicating environmental issues to Christian circles, it's important to understand where they're coming from, where the resistance is coming from. In most cases, it's usually not scientific.